Welcome to the Indie Author Spotlight, where we interview indie authors about upcoming releases as well as life as an author, presented to you by Books Brews and Dogs. You can visit booksbrewsanddogs.com, purchase a blind date with a book, and support animal rescue efforts. Books Brews and Dogs is where you can buy a book and save a dog or a cat.
Um, Welcome to BBD podcast. We're here with Gigi Meier, who is an indie author and an Amazon bestseller. So let's get into what she's got going on. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you for having me. I come to you from a hotel room in Abilene because I'm here. I'm a single mom, and so when I'm not an indie author, I'm over on baseball tournaments. And so we have an invitational up here in Abilene. So,
Oh, fun.
yep,
All right. So how's the baseball tournaments going?
he did really well in North Texas, Oklahoma, that tournament. And so he was invited to a Christian school up here in Abilene College and on a high school prospect invitation showcase. So what that means is at 16, he had college coaches invite him to come out and perform for him to see how he is doing. So
Oh, how
in hopes
exciting.
of an athletic scholarship in a couple years. So fingers crossed.
Yes. Well, good luck to him.
Thank
And I'm
you.
glad you're able to be there, for those events and have some fun. So I was lucky enough to be introduced to you through Lauren Sorensen, who is the first interview that I did. And once we started talking, I went and got one of your books on KU. And I got the first book in the Bikers of Boston series, which is your most recent series, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Oh my God. I loved reading it. It took me 2 days um,
Oh,
to read the whole book, and I immediately put book two on my TBR. Now, I'm horrible with names, so I can't remember the exact names of all of them, but Full Throttle is book one and Pinned Throttle is book two.
correct.
Correct.
Yes.
And you're working on the
Whiskey.
whiskey, and that one is coming out soon. But there's gonna be four in total for the series.
Correct. So first off, thank you to Lauren Sorensen. She's an amazing author, and we did an anthology together, as fate would have, or oh gosh, I just as fate would have us, or something like that. Fated Mates. But that anthology is out on, oh, it's wide, so you can see it there. And so she's a wonderful author, and I thank her for that. But Bikers of Boston, yeah, I started that series this year. I plan to publish 4 books in the series. Full Throttle with Diego and Isabella is already out. That came out the end of February. Pin Throttle, which is much more dark and a little bit of mystery to it, suspense. That is Dominic and Dr. Claudia Marlowe, who he calls his effing menace. And then I have, yeah, he's super fun. He's dark. He cusses a lot. He's quite brilliant. He has a million vices. And so he has a terrible relationship with his mother. And that is who Holly or Hollister Harrington III gets involved with as Dominic's mom. So Holly is a pleaser. But when Dominic finds out that his best friend is dating his mom, it goes explosive. And then the third and final book, or the fourth and final book, are twins. So that's going to be Twisted Throttle, and it's a white choose reverse age gap twins. Spicy.
Fun. So one thing that I noticed, because I haven't read them, but I've gone back and looked at your previous series that you have as well, which is the Canyon series, uh, and then the Cougars and Cubs series. And your main characters are always these really strong, independent women. And the reverse age gap seems to be a big theme there. So why choose the reverse age gap so regularly? Oh, they're back from their walk.
They're like,
Hi,
hey, mama.
hi guys.
So why I chose reverse age gap is because I feel like it's the next step in like, I hate to say the feminine movement because when you say that word, it gets a lot of negative press, but it's equality, right? It's leveling the playing field. We've had older men and younger women for centuries, royalty, athletes, politicians, etc. And so why not, older women and younger men? Plus, it's very, very popular nowadays. We're starting to see it more in movies, like Nicole Kidman put out a couple movies about it. She has, I think, two of them out. And then we have Anne Hathaway. And so to me, I just like exploring reverse age gap. The Canyon series is a very dark romance. There's tons of trigger warnings on my website because, ooh, girl, you can't go in blind on that series. You got to know up front.
Good to know.
But yeah, those are dark romance and they are age gap. So typically, like an older man, younger woman, not a whole lot older
Hmm.
man. And then I thought I'm going to flip it and do reverse age gap. But I really, really enjoy that. So Cougars and Cubs is exactly that. It's Cougars and Cubs together. And so I like that dynamic so well. That's what I took into Bikers of Boston. And then I'm working on a third reverse age gap series. It's going to be like somehow like hot guys and around candy theme.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So
So,
we can play around with candy on those spicy scenes.
oh, God. Oh, that's dangerous. Um, so
I digress.
it's easy to do. It's easy to get distracted. Hi, buddy. This is Perrin, and that one is Murphy.
They're
And
gonna hang out with us.
yeah, they'll hang out for a little while for sure.
Perfect.
Um, so I read Pinned Throttle. Wait, yeah. Um,
Yes, full throttle.
well, no, Full Throttle. Pinned Throttle is the one that just came out,
Yeah,
right?
correct,
Full
correct.
Throttle is the first one. Sorry. See, names. I'm bad. Um, and Isabella, I absolutely love the way you embodied her. It is Isabella, right? Or is it Isabel?
Correct.
Isabella. Okay.
Isabella Rossi,
Yeah.
Dr. Isabella Rossi.
And she is incredibly written. I love how strong and independent she comes out, and yet you still were able to embody those kind of small insecurities that she was facing and that we all face every day without it making her less independent and less strong. Um, and a lot of times when you're reading a book and they go into that insecurity part, it's like you lose a little bit of that strength in the character. And you did such a good job of keeping her that strong, independent woman and like reminding us that even though we're strong and independent, we're allowed to have those insecurities. And it was so much fun to read and so much fun to see that in a character. So how do you embody that? Like what goes through your head while you're writing these characters, or how do you plan that out?
Okay, first, thank you so much for those beautiful words because when you are writing as an author, it's very solitary. So sometimes you're not exactly sure if you're getting it or the characters that you see them or how they're being portrayed to readers. So thank you for that. I try to take with each of my characters. I love strong, independent women because let's be honest, the single women raising children has exploded. I mean, women have been the epicenter of everything, right? Family, home, now career. And so we've been kind of taught to like you can do it all, you're expected to do it all and do it with grace. But let's be honest, we still want what we want. I mean, there's a beautiful synergy when it comes to a masculine man and a feminine woman. And I don't think that ever changes. And I think that's why we, as hopeless romantics, fall in love with romance because we want to explore all these different dynamics outside of our own existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I write these characters, I think, okay, well, they're whole and complete on their own. However, who could come along that could just kind of heal or smooth over some of those insecurities or weaknesses that we've collected as women through the years? And so that's really kind of the mindset I go for. Although with Pin Throttle, I kind of shift that focus to Dominic, and then she is the yin to his yang. So that's kind of my process. And I'll be honest with you, somewhere in the middle, it finally clicks. But I'm discovering as I write that first draft, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why they work. And then just the characters just speak to me, and all of a sudden they just start clicking.
Hmm.
And that's usually like from that spicy scene on, that's when the whole like emotional becomes messy, and they kind of have the Frankenstein and back together to figure out who they're going to be as a couple.
Yeah. Well, I really like the dynamic that they play because you don't just see her insecurities as well. You see his, and you really get the sense of him projecting that insecurity into his confidence, where he's just like so overconfident because of how insecure he feels in that situation. And that's the sense that you get, or at least that I got when I read it. And it was really nice to see that as well. Um, because a lot of times in romance, the man is always confident and just knows what he wants. And he did know what he wanted, right?
To a point.
But he still was like going back to his friends, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And he goes back to Dominic and it's like, what? And Dominic's like, you're an idiot, which was a great dynamic. And it's, I can really see like how you can go use each person in the biker circle that you've created and using all of these men and going through their individual stories, but hinting at their personalities and kind of what they're going to be like in their own books. And so I'm really excited to get to Pinned Throttle and read more about Dominic because just how sassy he was to names.
There you
Oh
go.
my gosh, Diego. In the first book, when Diego was trying to like go to him in regard to Isabella and like, what do I do? And he's just like, you're an idiot, man.
And that's the thing that I love is so Diego had his whole career ahead of him. He raced in a MotoGP, so racing motorcycles, and had a tragic accident, a career-ending accident on the track. And so he then had to pivot. And I think that's so reflective of people in life, right? Like our life goes one way, and then something like a split second decision or something goes wrong, and the trajectory of our life changes forever. So I wanted to write in that, whereas like Isabella had this safe, cozy environment. She didn't have the best relationship with her mom because she kind of pushed her mom out because her and her dad were just so close.
Hmm.
And so naturally, Diego can't have a super loving family. She already has that. And so that's the yin to his yang. And that's why he kind of adopts her dad as his idol in chemistry. And so it just works on so many levels. But that confidence and that cockiness came from all of his motor racing days.
Hmm.
But now he's over and he's human and he's starting at zero with chemistry. And so I feel like that is just how reflective life can be with a lot of us. And yeah, let me tell you, Dominic, I was a little worried when I wrote him because he went way off script. And I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know. I sent it to my developmental editor and I was like, girl, I don't know about him. He's gone way off script. He's gone rogue. I don't know if it's going to work out. So, yeah.
And, you know, that feels really fitting for the personality that comes through with him, that he is just rogue. He's constantly like, you guys are irritating me. I'm just gonna go. Like when the group gets together and the twins start their little antics, he's always just like, I can't deal with this.
I'm
And
above it. Yeah, because he's
yeah,
highly brilliant. He's a child prodigy. This is Dominic we're talking about. So Dominic is a prodigy, child prodigy, completely brilliant. and he's a neurochemist. And so that's why he went into neurochemist to study the brain and what the heck's going on with him. You know, he's been through therapy, counseling, drugs, medicine, you name it, and he's trying to just figure out himself. And the whole basis, I thought, who would be great? Because I have been around really brilliant people. One of them was my uncle. He was quite intelligent and not, and he was in chemistry, not neurochem, and they can't relate. They're so brilliant. Like all this, you know, this line and below, it's too superfluous, it's too nonsense, it's just too ridiculous. And so they don't have the patience for it. And their brain constantly is always going. So he has a million vices. You know, he smokes weed, he vapes in his lab. You know, he has, you know, spicy with other people. He rides his bike. He's always trying to escape his brain, but he never can.
Yeah. Um,
Oh,
it's
and it takes a TV criminologist, which she has no respect for, obviously, in her books. And she's on all these TV shows talking about these, you know, criminal profiles that she's done. And she comes along and just cracks the code to him. But when I was writing that, I was like, who is the most ridiculously likely person to do this that he would totally despise and look down on? Because that's how he treats everybody.
well, I'm interested to see how that ends up turning around for him uh in the next book. And so it's really exciting, like all the little things going through my head. How is she going to play this out? How is she going to play that out? Because he is such a dynamic character of, you know, with that crazy high intelligence, the aloofness of everyone he's around is just completely like self-absorbed, but not in the I need to be center of attention self-absorbed kind of way.
8% of
Like
attention. Yeah.
it's
Almost
uh
self-contained. He wants his whole environment
yeah,
to be
that's a
like
better
his lab. He
yeah.
wants to be able to control the people, the elements, everything in science makes sense in neurochem. So that's why he finds it so comforting. People are all these radical variables, especially the twins, especially Emilio.
When we get to that one, that one's gonna be, I imagine that's gonna be a wild ride.
Yeah, I know because Emilio just does and says whatever he wants. And so I have kind of thought in my mind, I have a person close to me that has ADHD. And wow, that's Emilio. I was like, yeah, that's him. That's him.
Yeah. Oh, it's such an exciting series, and I'm really looking to forward to being able to dig into it deeper. I really wish I had had time to do more reading on it before, other than just the one. But um, the sex scenes, I am not a motorcycle rider. They seemed plausible. How did you choreograph that? Like, how did that play out? How did you get the choreography to make it seem plausible to write the scene on the motorcycles and with the motorcycles?
Okay, so I love this question because it's really like logistics, you know, where does hand and placement and so what you're referring to is there's lots of public spicy scenes, right? So it's
Mhm.
on the bike, it's on the ATV. I think it's on the bike twice. It's, you know, by the rock
They had
quarry.
the one in the back of the truck, but that's logistically easy to figure out. It's
Yeah,
the
the truck
bikes
bed
that
under
it's
the
like,
stars.
huh?
Yeah, truck bed under the stars while it rained. And he was, you know, talking about his sad breakthrough, right? And so, yes, to be quite honest, I watched adult films
Oh,
in order to be able to get it right. That was my research. And I was like, and I was thinking, like, there's no films that would have this. Like, who in the world is no girl? There is.
think
There's that category.
I think they go in every direction. Um, I would have never thought about using it as a tool in that way. Using those films as a tool in that way.
Having to describe it because you're like, okay, how big does a bike have to be in order to hold the weight of another? And then, you know, all the activity and leverage or thrusting that has to happen. And so originally I had his bike and it was too small. And I have been around a few bikers, street bikes. And so there's so many like CCs. And so I had him on like a smaller bike that didn't have enough CCs. So I had to change his bike to a bigger one that can hold or withstand. So yeah. And how I learned that was from a video because this guy was commentating on his bike.
Oh wow.
So yeah.
So you had um how much like how did that work out, like other than just obviously watching it, but like dissecting that through those scenes? Was there like pausing and taking notes? Was there
Um,
like
I love it. You're like, what is your process for this? But yeah, it really is because I want you guys to be immersed in the story. I want readers to just, you are Isabella or you are Dr. Claudia Marlowe. That's why I write in deep first person because I want you to feel what they feel. You're back against the wall, making tough decisions, etc. And so I feel like that motivation that's always underlined for me as an author and in my books, it's the same when it comes to these spicy scenes. In fact, I feel like it's even more of an obligation to do it right because I've read spicy scenes and I'm like, wait a minute, you can't do that. And how is this going and logistics? And, and so I kind of dissect other people's spicy scenes already. So
Mhm.
I find myself really inept or adept to do that.
Well, it can really take you out of the world when it's not done properly. And
Totally
while
agree.
the
Totally agree.
spicy scenes, especially when the spicy scene in a book propels the characters forward.
Yeah.
So, like your spicy scenes aren't there just to be spicy. They actually propel the relationship that the characters are going through forward. Like there's a lot of things that happen immediately after. Like they immediately feel the over sense of dread, like, oh my god, what happens if everyone finds out? I can't believe, like, I was going Isabella on that first time when she's like, let's just do the thing and maybe I'll get over it, or and then that instant existential crisis that she has a little bit because it's her student and what did I just do? And
100%, because let's be honest, we've all had that like crazy, the horniness that acts like a drug. So you're almost like intoxicated by it. And then when you actually do it and scratch that itch, you're like, oh my gosh, it could be a walk of shame. It could be guilt. So with men, it's like a lot of times they'll decide yes or no, we're all in, or no way, what did I do? Why am I here? Etc. I love those conflicting human emotions because they're so real.
right, right, and you can feel that in your characters, and I love how you didn't have her just feeling those feelings and then move on to the next scene, but you also explain Diego's feelings about it, and like, but from the point of view where he doesn't know what's going through her head, right? So you did a really good job of separating out and creating that actual dynamic that would happen where one person's freaking out, the other person's going, why are you freaking out? I don't understand what happened, and reacting, and so that's kind of like their first like time that they headbutt as they're building towards the relationship. And those scenes are just done really well, and it's nice to see that the spicy scenes aren't just thrown in there to be spicy, but they do actually help propel those characters forward.
Well, thank you. That is so such a wonderful compliment. But you're right, because I can't just, there has to be a natural symmetry, right? To when you write, it has to be just like cause and effect and cause and effect. And so I can't just write a spicy scene without there being either a fallout or that brings them closer together. One party is conflicted. They're both conflicted. They're like, oh my gosh, we've all done that, right? We've all been that way, felt that way. And it doesn't necessarily have to even be, about sex. It could be a lot of things like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have taken that job promotion, or I shouldn't have answered that phone call. I mean, we all go a million different directions. And so just because you have that intimacy, not all parties are on the same page sometimes.
Yeah.
And I love to explore that.
And you do such a you do a really good job with that and bringing those feelings and those emotions across, and you get really immersed into the characters and the story that is happening, that which is why it was so easy to read, and so easy to it's a little over 300 pages, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think it
Uh,
came in about 77,000 words. Uh, Dominic is at 82,000 words.
okay. So yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes when you're reading it on the e-reader, like exactly how many pages and things, but it's a decent sized novel, and it's and I read it in 2 days because I didn't want to put it down. And
Yay! That's super
so
fast.
that's well, it also helps that I no longer have a corporate job. So I was able
Well,
to
congratulations on
create
that.
my own schedule to put things off so that I could read it. That is a, a privilege that I have sometimes um to be able to do now. So but you know it's always fun when you get a book that you don't want to put down. And you and Lauren both have contemporary romance books. And I, for the most part, either read fantasy and sci-fi, or I'm reading textbooks. So
You
I
need
read a lot of
fantasy is
psychology,
great, but you need a little bit of thrill on the textbook
right?
side.
Um, I read a lot of books on psychology and a lot of books on spirituality. And I was raised in a very religious home, and they kind of went back and forth in and out of the church a lot, being raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And so I find that the psychology and religious interesting. So anyways, stepping out of my wheelhouse to read these contemporary romances, and both you and Lauren kept me, I'm finding that I may be adding a new genre into, right, my typical reading. Um, because while I read fantasy, yes, I read romantasy, but I read a lot of just general fantasy, like Wheel of Time, big world building stuff. And so this is something that is truly new to me, reading the romance. Your book is the second contemporary romance book I've ever read.
Oh, well,
Lauren's was
thank
the
you.
first.
I am honored.
So,
We'll convert you.
yeah, you guys are doing a good job so far, because I'm looking forward to your next books and seeing what else you have coming. And so it's been really exciting kind of discovering this new way of looking at the characters and the way that they're being built in a more recognizable setting
Mhm.
without creating that world building. Because while fantasy does do a good job, authors can do an amazing job of immersing you in that, you're leaving your world.
For sure.
And in contemporary romance, you're not leaving your world, you're staying in your world. And so you guys do a really good job of kind of allowing me to leave the space that I'm in and enter that area, even though it's like, because I'm not questioning, like, wait, that doesn't seem right. Wait, that does, because you guys have done your research and really spelled that out. And so I'm still like immersed in your book and your characters and drawn into those emotional aspects that you're putting into your characters, which is a huge focus in your books. So you do the world building and you describe the scenes and the areas where the characters are. But the
Mhm.
main focus of your books is the emotional development of the characters. And I think you just do that so well that you really can kind of picture yourself being there in that character's position and reacting in the ways that they did.
Well, thank you. I really try to. So, a lot of times I have gone to the cities that I write about, or I watch 1,000 YouTube videos to try and be like, okay, how does the light and what does it smell like? And is it windy or not, etc. And so with the Bikers of Boston, there was a scene that we know that they're racing each other. So in full throttle, Diego and Isabella are racing each other. And if you remember that scene, I wrote it and I had a reader reach out to me and she goes, I live in Boston. Your two race scenes, because I had the boys in the beginning where they raced her and I was talking about going around the curve and so she said your two racing scenes are spot on for like the roads, the topography. I said, girl, thank you. Because I watched so many of those Boston historic tour videos, which are not they're not as exciting as the adult ones,
Yeah.
obviously, to try and be like, okay, is this cobblestone? Austin, I mean, Boston is very historic. And so I was like, okay, do they have paved roads like they have, like us in Texas? And oh, they still have some cobblestone streets. Well, how do you ride on those? So yeah, I watched a ton of historic tour videos on YouTube.
That sounds kind of boring.
It's kind of like your textbooks that you talked about, but
Well, I guess I feel a little bit like Diego and Dominic on that area. I get really interested in those that they aren't really that boring to me. Um,
exactly, because it's your passion. But I thought that was a really lovely compliment that a reader had said, you nailed the scenery right in my hometown. I was like, yes, a local said it.
yes.
So she had mentioned something about the Boston Red Sox, and I'm not a huge sports person. I'm in that nucleus, or I'm kind of orbiting sports because of my child. And I thought, oh, I'm going to make one of the twins like these crazy Boston Red Sox fans, like those diehard ones that everybody like they have those huge rivalries and they just go nuts. So that's coming in the twins book. I thought, okay, I'm gonna take that little gem that she sent me. So I'm gonna put it in their book.
That is really awesome that, you got that validation on the research you were doing. I can only imagine that that felt like so good and like giving you like that little giddy, like, oh, yes.
Nailed it. Yeah. It is
So,
encouraging, right? Because we as authors who have imposter syndrome, we have insecurities, we get worried like, okay, we wrote this story, but will anybody read it? Will anybody like it? Will it resonate? So yeah.
so, I'm laughing right now because I caught Perrin walking in on camera behind me, bringing his dragon, and he's saying, "Mom." He threw it in my lap, which you can't, and then it dropped. So, here's his little dragon, and he's
He
like,
brought his little baby toy in. That's so cute.
"Here, go lay in your bed." He's like, "Why'd you throw my dragon?"
He's like, Mommy, no, we play dragons.
Um, so, uh, I got distracted. I forgot what I was gonna say, but it's really awesome that you were able to get that validation
Yeah.
and that they reached out to that they were so happy about it that they reached out to tell you. It just
Oh, I
shows
always
how
say
much
my
detail you
DMs are,
put.
yeah, my DMs are always open, always reach out, whether you are an aspiring author, aspiring writer, reader. I love to just hear and interact with people.
Mm,
I kind of really like to have people share their experience. So maybe I can borrow a piece. Or like she said, something about the Red Sox. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's like, we're diehard. A true Bostonian is a diehard Red Sox fan. And I was like, I need to write that.
yeah. So that's really cool to be able to get those anecdotes and be able to add them in. So speaking of your DMs always being open to aspiring authors and whatnot, you have a few other things that you do on the side, just aside from writing. So you've got literary lines, Let's Go Live, and then you just did started a Gigi Meier podcast as well, right?
Yeah, so just real briefly, Literary Lines is where I interview authors and I do that podcast. They're usually about an hour long. So the interviews, I host them on Let's Go Live. So that's a Instagram weekly series at 7 o'clock on Thursdays, Central Standard Time. And that's where I interview anybody in the publishing industry. If you put a book out, if you're an editor, developmental editor, if you're a publisher, print house, because two things. I am fascinated by people. I love meeting people, and I also want to share their story with my audience. And I feel like, we had talked about earlier, me and you, we rise with the tide. So if I'm able to help other new and aspiring authors or the existing authors, I would love to use my platform to do that because I believe so strongly in the book community. I feel like we are all wonderful people. We all have a shared interest. And so when the world is crazy and divisive, and however you want to divide it up like it is nowadays, that's the one thing that brings us all together. And it's books is what brings everyone together. It doesn't matter your race, nationality, creed, religion, all that. And that's what I love. It's humans.
That's amazing. And I agree. It's part of why I started doing the podcast after meeting Lauren. So the way I met Lauren is I saw an Instagram post about the Million Lives event that she had gone to. And I messaged her saying, hey, I want to read your books. How do I purchase your book? And I want to offer your books on my website through my Blind Date with a Book, which helps support the local rescues. And so turns out she lives in Austin with me. And well, not with me, but
Hello, Texan.
right. And so we got together and we were just hanging out and we couldn't stop talking. We were just talking and talking and talking. And so it was like, you know what? Why don't I just do this? And I put the idea to her and she goes, absolutely, you need to do it. And I was like, okay. So here we are, doing this interview where we're helping to promote two of my favorite things, authors. And for me, I specifically want to work with indie authors because the ones with big publishers don't really need my help, do they? They've got massive amount of teams. Not that
They
I
have a
have a
marketing
huge
budget. Yeah.
audience, but you know,
They're doing all right. They're doing all right.
yeah, they're doing okay. And then rescues, animal rescues. So my dog Murphy was an animal rescue that we got from a local rescue, and we tried to foster, and it wasn't really something we were able to do at the time. And so we developed something so we could do that. And so it's really, community is like so important in everything that we do and building each other up. And I really love how supportive every author that I have met since starting this. So I have interviews scheduled all the way out until March of next year.
Congratulations. It's so exciting because
It's nerve-wracking. I was not expecting that.
no, you got this. You're a natural.
So, oh, thank you. So it's really exciting to meet you guys and people like you who are about community and about helping other people achieve um, their dreams and step outside of that corporate space, which is something that you have experience doing because you were not always an author.
No, and that's why I started my Gigi Meier podcast because it's really about reinvention. I have it as rewrite, recreation, and reclaim. So the idea is that we're always reinventing ourselves, and that can be at any age, right? So you're right. I had spent 30 years in corporate America. I could have died in that chair, like I could have kept on going. I was the youngest C-suite executive female at the time by 10, 15, even 20 years. Some of my colleagues in the C-suite were 20 years older than me. And I thought I could do this, but I don't want to die with my music inside. And so it's taken me a transition of going from that structured corporate environment to going out and becoming a romance author. And many, many people have thought I was crazy, but I thought, no, I want to live my dream. Like I dreamed the dream of being in corporate America. I got to the very top pinnacle of my success. So dream a new dream. And that can happen at any age. And that's why I started the podcast because I want to be encouraging of women. We sometimes lock ourselves in and it's not intentional. It's just like this slow progression, and it's just, okay, well, I want to make more money. I want to progress. I want promotion. I want the accolades. And a lot of times it has to do with our inner work that we have maybe not done because that's uncomfortable. It's difficult. We don't even know that we have limiting beliefs holding us back. But yet one day you wake up and you're like, I was tricked by the future that I picked. I got me here. So how do I get myself out of here.
Yeah.
So that's why I resonate so well with people that have left or have taken the leap and they're scared to death or they don't know how to do it because I had golden handcuffs and I walked away. And I can't think of one day I've regretted that decision. Now, have I been scared? Yeah. Do I do it scared, worried, nervous? Yeah, I'm a single mom, and I'm raising two kids. So, but I feel like we only get one shot at life.
Hmm.
And wouldn't that be a tragedy if you're in a nursing home having to look back on all your regrets?
Yeah. And it really is a nerve-wracking thing to leave that
Yep.
steady confirming income, to go, I'm gonna try and do this and push this and make it work. And so like knowing that there's somebody out there, or multiple people out there that are doing the same thing, that see your struggle and are willing to be there to support you through that struggle is amazing. And so um it's all of the things that you're doing are just, you're putting your whole heart into them and you can tell. So I've watched, before this interview, trying to do my research, watched some of the things that you're doing, and you're fun and you're lively and you're always supportive of everyone that you're doing, and taking some of your interview questions in stride. Uh, but I just, it's, I forgot what I was gonna say. Just
No
went right
worries.
out my head.
You know why? Because it's scary because we have to bet on ourselves.
Hmm.
And the whole structure is not to bet on yourselves. The whole structure is you go to college, you get in debt, right? We get a bunch of student loans. They become way more than you'll ever make in a salary. And then you're chained to
Hmm.
this employer or this income level that you're required to. And so our whole social structure, this and the norm is that you will work for the man, you will work for corporate America, or you will work for an employer, and you never go all bets in on yourself. And that's why it's so scary. And it comes at a cost, right? Okay, so yeah, you go in, you have all these student loans. Now you're working 9 to 5, or you're working in corporate America. And to me, in my case, I was like, okay, does my soul die? Do all my dreams die? What do I do? And so I'll be honest with you, a lot of us don't have energy to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and then do a side hustle. And I know there's this whole like hustle culture and what I do from my 9 to 5 and my 5 to 9 and all that. But there's so many people that don't have the bandwidth, the energy, the emotional and mental capacity. They're just tapped out.
I couldn't imagine having to do that and have kids.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard enough. I've got two dogs, and that's hard enough. Um,
Yeah,
so
if you were to ever interview my children, whew, that schedule was brutal. Like they
yeah.
had to be two separate schools, dropped off. And I'll be honest with you, I had to be in my chair across town at 8 a.m. And so my children were dropped off 7:15 and 7:30 in the morning, race there. So they sat at school and then went into extended care, they call it daycare, till 6. So you're talking what incredibly long hours my children had to be in there. So that comes at a cost too, right?
Hmm.
Do I make the amount of money I was in the C-suite? No, but oh my goodness, has it paid off in spades because of the quality time my kids get back? Because I make every baseball, modeling, you name it, I make every event for them. I drop off, I pick up, etc. So we
Yeah,
like to measure ourselves by income, but it's such a limited, really unrealistic measuring stick.
it
It
is.
needs to be a holistic of your whole life and the beauty of your emotional, mental, physical health, spiritual too.
Yeah, and that quality time is huge, right? So
Huge.
my my it doesn't compare at all, but my dogs don't care what toys they have or what kind of food I'm putting in their bowl.
It's you.
But what they do care about is whether I'm taking them on that walk and I'm playing with that toy with them. And, and I know it doesn't compare to having kids, but it makes a difference in their lives, right?
But also in
Um,
yours.
yeah,
You get that pure unconditional love back that fills you up. It lowers, it's an endorphin rush. It lowers your cortisol. I mean, we can't undermine that. I know that you said children and animals aren't the same, but Animals are just pure. They bring so much love, joy, and happiness in our life, and the benefits to our health are just extraordinary. But we discount that, right? You can work, I worked in corporate America 30 years. There's an opportunity cost.
Hmm.
Sure, you have the money, but then everything else suffers.
Yeah.
Fitness, children relationships, your own relationships with your spouse, etc.
And if you have the money, but you don't have the time to use it, then what is, hi, Murphy buddy.
Well, it was very, very tragic, but I worked with a CAO who passed away on the job.
Wow.
Yeah, went out, we did a charity golf tournament. He passed away that night and didn't even get to retirement. So you work all this time and we say, oh, well, when I retire this, I'm going to travel. When I retire, and we put in, and that line isn't necessarily for like when you retire, when I get the house, when I find the spouse, when I get this degree, when I get the promotion, we move that line to happiness all the way out.
All the time.
And that's everybody. And that's why I started that podcast because I'm like, let's talk about this. Let's go through some like strategic ways that you can start undoing the life that you picked, that you're tricked by, and start leading the life you design and you curate and you want.
And it's scary. It's a scary thing to do because we're trained to trust, um, go to school, get the
Yeah,
job, do the thing, and
so scary.
it's something I've said before is like, we have this idea. If you say American dream, everyone knows what it means. Even people who don't live in the U.S. know what the American dream is. In my, I'm 40 years old this year, and I have yet to meet somebody that actually wants that as their dream, yet it's something that we're all working towards. And we're all individual people with all of our own individual aspirations outside of that. And so why are we all working towards the same thing when we're not the same person? And it's so scary to step outside of that box that's been constructed for us. God knows I'm terrified.
Well,
But
my DMs are open to you too, girl. But I know what you're saying. I'm not trying to make light of the situation because
no.
without a doubt, we live in the best country in the world, right? We don't have to, as women, we don't have to worry about, so, I mean, of course, we have to worry about our safety, but you can start a podcast, you can have freedom of speech. We have so many liberties
Hmm.
that I personally take for granted, like I can get in a car and I can drive 6 hours. I don't have to have a male person, a man in the car to do it, like some countries do. I can go and take my son places all by myself. And there are many, many women in the world that cannot do that without having a male, not escort, but like a male companion.
Hmm.
And so I think we get locked into our own brain and our own limitations and what society dictates, but we have to just take a step back and be like, you're one decision away from radically changing your life. You as a female today, and I know, happy early birthday, you're turning 40, you could quit your job, sell all your belongings, and do a van life. You
Hmm.
can start this podcast like you did. We can write a book. You can go skydiving. I mean, the world is your oyster, and I truly believe that for people. But sometimes when we're leading this, 9 to 5 or this 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and your life is just so repetitive because you have work, children, family, maybe you're a caregiver. We have all these obligations that lock our schedule down. And then you realize, like, I have no choice. This is my life.
Yeah.
We always have a choice. It may bring some discomfort and fear, but I just want people like, let's baby step into it. You can cannonball into the deep end. You can quit everything, sell everything, and move to wherever you want, but that's not always practical. So how do we get you a little bit of hope and joy to start those first steps to reclaiming your life?
And it's just such a beautiful message and a beautiful way of getting out there and helping people feel more connected to themselves. And so it's really exciting to see you embrace that, realizing what you went through, becoming an indie author, and then sharing that experience and helping people getting gain that confidence to then follow their dreams and their true aspirations instead of the one that's been set in front of them.
Thank you. I try because I really do believe that. And I'm so encouraged by people and their stories. And so that's why I keep these little episodes for like 8 to 10 minutes. I know we don't have a whole lot of attention span. Maybe it's just your commute. Maybe it's before you pick the kids from car line, etc. Maybe it's like right before you go to bed, you want to put on a podcast just to like get off your screen and kind of decompress. So it's that kind of thing, just to try and be an inspiration and to give back to what has been given to me. I'm very, very blessed in many aspects. And so I feel that that's what I want other people to feel. I want people to be blessed.
Yeah.
We only
And
get one life, so.
and it shows. So, let's go back to your books for a second. You've got the Bikers of Boston series that's still coming out, but books 1 and 2 are currently out, correct?
Yes.
And so book 3 is coming out. I'm trying to remember.
August. Whiskey Throttle will be
August, Whiskey
August.
Throttle. Okay, and then after that is the one about the twins.
Twisted twins.
Twisted. Yeah.
So it's why I choose.
So we've got 2 of the 4 out and 2 more coming out. So it's very exciting. I'm so excited to be to for when I have time to dig into that second book and go through that. But Bikers of Boston is definitely worth the read, and I can only imagine that your other series are also worth the read. You also have one standalone though, don't you? Um,
So that was my debut novel. And for anybody that is a new and aspiring author, write the book. You choose to become a writer and author every single day. Every single day you don't want to write, you procrastinate. That story is in you, needs to be told. So Coyote was my first one. I worked with the developmental editor on that one almost a whole year, because when you write a book, you're trying to learn who you are as a writer. Do you write at night? Do you write better in a group of people? Writing sprints, writing alone, writing with music. I mean, there's just so many parameters. Then you have to figure out what kind of work you are. Do I write in short sentences? Do I write in long sentences? Am I good at dialogue, narrative, description, etc.? And so I feel like that is the book I cut my teeth on. It's not at all spicy. I think I have maybe one spicy scene in it at all, but I worked with a developmental editor, and that's kind of the one I'm proud of. Will I rewrite it? Yes. Technically, I have 10 books that I wrote before I ever published that one that may or may not see the light of day, because I wrote during really difficult times in my marriage or really difficult times at work. And so that was kind of my creative outlet to help process things that were happening in my universe. So when I go back to those stories, it kind of puts me back into those negative environments and feeling the same feelings. So I don't know if those will ever come out. But Coyote kind of was one of those ideas that I had. I'd
well,
like to rewrite it because it's a drug cartel
ooh.
book,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a Marines that come in and kind of, save the day. And I would love to write each of the Marine stories.
Neat. Um, so that's really exciting though, that it was like just taking that one where you're like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna get it out there. I'm just gonna,
Cut your teeth on it, right?
yeah, because we have to start somewhere, right? Like there's always a first book or a first podcast or a
Yeah.
first something. There has to be something that's that first step. And so um I'm I do want to go back and read that so I can see the progression of you as an author as you moved forward and learned kind of who you are as an author and
Oh,
see
girl. Yeah.
changes. It's
But no,
funny.
it's good you mentioned that, because as a writer, what's important to me is always working on my craft. I've had 3 different developmental editors, and I feel that you work with different ones at different times in your career, and they really bring out the best of you. And so when I look back at that first book, I'm like, I should take that down because it's not at all my writing style today.
But it doesn't have to be, right? So there's like a debate that I've seen that happens where it's a couple of indie authors have been going, well, someone told me this is what I had been writing, so I should just stick with this, and but I really have this idea and this story in my head that's more in this genre, and I don't know what to do because I'm this kind of writer. And I'm like, why would you, I, I as a reader go, why would you limit yourself to, like, if you can tell a story, you can tell a story. And I know that different writing styles and different ways of doing it, things will have to adjust, but we don't go to school knowing how to read. We figure it out while we're there
Yep.
taking the steps. And so you can't learn to write fantasy if you never attempt to write fantasy or contemporary or any of those. And so I just find it interesting that people feel like they have to stick to only one.
No, I agree with you because your readers won't always resonate, right? So I have some readers that will read The Cougars and Cubs and The Bikers of Boston, but they're not really interested in reading a dark romance, and that's fine. And so I feel like if you write a variety, if you want to do romantic suspense, if you want to do why choose, if you want to do like reverse age gap like I do, you'll find your audience in different things.
Yeah. So, yeah, because there's more than just one audience. You don't have to cater to just one, but then the audience that you do have might learn that they actually do enjoy that other genre and might be able to expand out because they would have never thought to do it except for they really like you as an author and decide they want to support and read that work as well. And because I don't read just one genre. My husband doesn't read just one genre. So it's nice to have a variety of things that we read and you know from authors that we already know we like their cadence and their writing style and and finding an author that you like the cadence. So probably people might hate me for this, but I cannot read Stephen King. I don't like, he's one of the most popular horror writers, and I love
Mhm.
horror stories. And I have tried so many of his books, and his stories, concepts are so amazing, and it irritates me, but something about the cadence in which he writes or that I read his writing, I'm just like, oh, I can't. Right? And so it's not always that, we don't like that. It's not that I don't like horror stories,
Yeah.
because the first one I read was a Stephen King and I couldn't get into it, but then I read Dean Koontz and I was able to get into the Dean Koontz
Mhm.
stories and realizing that, oh, I can read these darker novels and I do actually like them, right? And but people won't know that if they don't get the opportunity to try the other stories that you have in your head when they know that they like your writing style, because your writing style is gonna, I imagine, would come through on any genre, like that cadence in which you write and the way you form your sentences and write them out would be very similar,
Yep.
right?
No, I completely agree. And so that's why I think there's so many different authors, right? Is that romance is a very wide umbrella with all these tropes and subgenres underneath it. But also when you talk about writing style, I mentioned that earlier. Do you write in long sentences, short sentences, clippy description? And so readers have a preference also.
Yeah. And I can attest to that, which is why I think I have a hard time like giving um negative reviews, because I don't, because they're not um like, if a book isn't to my taste, like Stephen King,
Mhm.
he's a phenomenal writer. Like, I can't deny that. I
Yes.
don't care for his writing. So I'm not going to go out of my way and put a negative review up on one of his books because I didn't like it, like that story. And so and there's different levels of everything for each reader, but because I know that, I can see when it's like, this is a me thing, not an author thing. Like, this has nothing to do with the author. And so just learning, like, to figure that out. I don't know that everybody realizes that, like, it's not necessarily the author, it's might be you, or the story, it might be you just don't like that, the longer sentences or the clippier sentences or the extra detailed Anne Rice style descriptions.
Yeah.
So
Well, I appreciate you saying that though, because I know that reviews are vital for indie authors and we live and die by them. And you're right, some readers will go out and intentionally put very negative reviews. And you're thinking, like, as an author, then why read it or why continue to read my stuff if you didn't finish it, etc. And so if I read all my reviews, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I want to see if there's anything on writing craft, something I need to fix, something I need to be cognizant of, I need to change, learn from, grow as a writer.
mhm,
If they say, I don't like this character, I don't like the decisions she's made, she's just so abrasive. And Danny in my series, the Canyon series, Danny Winters,
mhm.
it's two books, one love story. So she's in Tomlin and she's in Takahashi. She's extremely abrasive, like without a doubt. So I have readers that are like, I love her or I hate her. And so if they put that in the review, to me, that's a compliment because it means that I wrote a really relatable character that they've now made her real in their mind enough to dislike her.
Yeah. And
So that's a compliment, even though it may get a low rating if they're criticizing her or how abrasive she is. Or I have people like, there is no woman in the world like this. And then I will have all these DMs like, oh my gosh, I am Danny. I would do what Danny says. I would say what Danny's, like I would do and say. And so I have tons of people like, I am that character. I am her. So for
yeah.
as many people that hate her, I have 10 times that love her.
Yeah. And I think that there's a big difference between a negative review and a constructive review.
Correct.
Just um and because I'm trying to say it and not just saying it, I can't think of it, but I never really liked the term constructive criticism, right? Because it's
Mhm.
still criticism. Like, I'm still criticizing you. But const um you can have constructive input. And there's a phrase I normally use, and I used it with Lauren's interview, but because I'm trying to say it, I can't think of it. Um,
Always.
it's
Tell how
like,
it goes.
where did it go? Um, but you can be supportive in and constructive in your feedback, right?
Mhm.
Instead of criticizing, uh, instead of being constructive in your criticism, you can be constructive in your feedback,
Mhm.
where it's like, here's this or here's that. But it really does take the reader being able to kind of step out of themselves a little bit and go, is, and be, and give perspective of, is this me
Yeah.
not liking this, or is this actually, you know, the writing didn't keep me enthralled, like the writing itself needed something else. And so it's really, I think, if we're going to step in and do a book review, that as a reader, it's our responsibility to be objective in
Mhm.
that review and step outside of our personal opinions, at least to a degree, right? So our personal opinion helps sell the book if we really love it, right? But if it wasn't a book that we didn't love, we need to be objective about what we're saying on why, because it's not fair to the author or potential readers who might love the book
Mhm.
if we're like, I didn't like it, it's horrible, they can't write, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't do anybody any good. But if you're like, this is what I didn't like about the book. Here's what pulled me out. Here's how I think it could have been better. Then someone can hear that and go, oh, that doesn't bother me.
Right, right.
Right.
Well, content and trigger warnings is a perfect example. I say don't go in blind, and people are like, oh my God, I love going in blind. I will say the Canyon series is loaded with every type of trigger you can imagine through the course of all four books. People are like, that's the one for me. So you're right. So, and we always say, like, don't ick someone's yum.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so true because I may write bikers or I may write reverse age gap, older women, younger men, and people are like, ew, gross, I don't want to read that. But then I have a whole group of women that are like, yes, don't write anything else but this.
I went in concerned that I wasn't going to enjoy it because of that.
Sure.
And I obviously did enjoy the books. And I really liked the dynamic. I did enjoy the dynamic that it brought because, as an older woman, I'm married. I've been with my husband for 15 or 16 years. I can't remember. And um but I still see other people and I still find them attractive and I'll go you know, out to a restaurant and the server or the bartender will look hot and it's like, hey, hi, I enjoy looking at you,
Girl, you're not
you know?
dead. Of course, of course.
And I'm lucky enough to have a husband that understands and sometimes we'll even be like, so I need you to turn around because I think you're going to appreciate that guy that's right behind you, right?
That's so healthy,
Secure
though.
enough in himself to know that, like, he's like, you're going
Yeah,
to want to look at that.
I love that. And that's like a healthy relationship, right? We're not dead. You're not blind.
Yeah.
Just as you can recognize a really attractive woman, he can recognize a really attractive man. So I love that for you guys.
And it's just really nice to be able to share that. And I do get him to read some of the stuff. So like he has read Fourth Wing and Akatar. Um,
Oh, look at
he's
him.
he's started reading Lauren's Reluctant Star that she just released.
Nice.
So I even have him reading the contemporary romance. Of course, he's like, this is not gonna be for me, but I'll finish it because you know her and it
I
is a good
mean,
concept and it is a good story. So he's taking his
if
time with it, but he is reading it.
if y'all can get ideas, then we've done our part, okay? We'll
That's
just leave
true.
that right there. We won't say nothing more. We'll just leave that right there.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely so at one of the events I was working at, where I was selling books, and I catered it to the dark romance books because it was on Friday the 13th and they were doing a whole theme for that event. And so all of the books that I sell, they're all blind date with a book, and I put a small description with a couple of the genres it falls under, 2 or 3 sentences about the book on the back of the book. And this lady heard my whole spiel about how every book goes back to helping animal rescue efforts and everything. And she goes, okay, I'm gonna have to look. I was trying to not buy one, but I have to look. And she goes and she picks out one of the darkest, spiciest books that I have on the table. And her husband goes, are you picking out another smut book? He's like, are you reading porn again? Like out loud for everyone to hear. And I just turn around and I'm like, what you should be doing is going back and annotating those pages.
Exactly.
He
Leave
just
it open on
turns
his side
bright
of the bed.
red.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, yeah,
While she's in there doing her 12-step skincare routine at night, you need to be reading these pages.
right. Like have her mark them. Like there's annotations on the cover of the book. I put those there not for the person reading the book. I put it there for their husband.
100%.
So, um, well, this has been really fun. We're sitting at a little over an hour, and I could talk with you all day, about books, about life. We've had some really great conversation, And is there anything that we missed that you wanted to cover or kind of repeat? And I'll put the links to your podcasts and your books and where they can get them all below the podcast and the video on YouTube and get all of that and make sure that everyone has access to those. Uh, but is there anything else that you'd really like to just make sure that readers or potential readers are aware of for you?
Well, I think my website, ggmeier.com, is kind of the hub of everything that I have going on. So you can always tune in there. My newsletter I send out every Tuesday is the newsletter sign up is on there. And so that's where I reach out and have ARC reader signups. There's the cover reveals. There's always excerpts of my book. So if you want to be in the know ahead of time, sign up for my newsletter. And then I have a Facebook group. It's called the Cougar Den. And so you can, I know, because that's where us cougars hang out. You can hang out there too. But at the end of the day, I really want people to find what lights them up. And if that is writing a book, because it's on many people's bucket list, and if I can help, then DM me. I'm more than happy to, because I really like to meet new people. And I really want people to live a beautiful, long, fulfilling life like I'm doing. And if I can contribute to somehow get that gift to you, that's what I want to do. I want to help others.
That's amazing, and it's so good to have community, and know that there's somebody there that you can talk to. So
100%, because what I found is that I have those that are my ride or die, but there are many people in this world that don't. And it is completely tragic that you don't have someone in your corner rooting and cheering you on. And as I've gotten older, I've figured out that many people don't, and they never have. And that is so sad. I do
yeah,
that for my children. I do that for my friends and my family around me. And so if I need to do that for others, I'm more than willing to, because I want them to experience the love, support, and encouragement that I receive. I want them to feel that way too.
yeah, and everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves
100%.
to feel encouraged to follow their dreams and their heart and the things that light them up and just make them smile. And that is, I think, a perfect note to end on. It is, let's get together, let's be community, let's help each other achieve what we want to do, whatever that may be.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I know if we lived closer, we'd be besties.
Yes, well, modern day does have the vehicles and stuff, so maybe we'll be able to one day actually get together and hang out. Hi, guys. Hi.
For those of you that can't see this, her dogs just come running in, and her husky is this fluffy puppy. And it's like he's smiling at you. It is so cute. He comes running in, he's bouncing, and he just has this big old puppy dog smile at you. Like, hi, mom.
Yeah, they're gorgeous um uh beings just in general. I mean, physically, as far as dogs go, they are beautiful specimens as well, but their personalities
You're
are
loved.
just amazing. And they have this thing, my husband takes them out for when a walk, and when they get back, he's to help entice them to come home when they're not wanting to leave the walk. He tells them, well, we have to go find mom. We have to go find mom. And so they come in. Every time they come in from a walk, they have to come and find me wherever I'm at in the house and come and say hi. And so it's really wonderful and adorable. And I love it, especially when I don't get to go on the walks with them. Because a lot of working from home, a lot of times I do end up at the computer. And while I get to spend all day with them, it's like they can be distracting, and I'm trying to do stuff or trying to train them. And so
Yep,
when he comes home, I'm like, I really need to focus in and get this done. And
exactly.
today I'm doing the interview with you. So I don't always get to go on that walk with them because I'm like, I need this hour to finish this
Mhm.
because they've been on my case all day, and they could be, I imagine, just as distracting as kids.
Oh, yeah. But he was like, hi, mom.
Yeah. I mean, they came and brought me their toys earlier, like, hey, throwing them in my lap. Are you gonna play? So,
So cute.
anyways, I've had such a wonderful time. Thank you again so much. Everybody, Gigi Meier, uh, she is an Amazon bestseller, and she's got the Bikers of Boston series that is halfway out. The third book is coming out when?
August.
August. So we're not that far away, only 2 months, guys. Um, and I am looking forward to finishing this series. I'm kind of glad it's not done yet because it gives me time to catch up to you.
I want to
Uh,
say thank you so much for having me on. It has
oh,
been
thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure and a delight to chat with you. And I definitely look forward to having you on my series, Let's Go Live on Thursdays.
Oh, yes, I would love to do that. And so we'll set that up and we'll do this again. So thank you again. And I hope everybody has a great day or night or whatever time it is you're listening to this. All right. Bye.